Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Every day there are countless books and articles that are published offering the key on how to make your business a success. It's easy to feel overwhelmed trying to keep up and run your business. That's why Deb Creer created the Business Power Hour. Keep up on the latest trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. Let the Business Power Hour do the heavy work for you.
Good morning. Good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about giving professionals the tools that they need to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And I was talking with my guest, and I realized we've had several discussions recently on this podcast about our topic. And that topic is leadership. And I think the reason we've been discussing it more is because, folks, leadership is needed more now than ever. And I'm not talking politics. I'm not talking, it's just we need people to be good leaders. And so please join me in welcoming Cory Dunham to our program today. Welcome, Cory. How are you?
I'm doing well, Deb, and very delighted to be here.
Perfect. I love it. Well, let me tell people a little bit about you, and then we will jump into this because we're going to have a great discussion. So Cory Dunham is a value-driven executive leadership coach and keynote speaker who helps high-performing executives lead with unshakable confidence by aligning values with bold action, turning fear into purpose, and results into legacy. With over 30 years of business experience and a lifelong commitment to faith, that's very important, family, and integrity, Cory empowers executives to lead themselves without burnout before they lead others, integrating who they are with how they lead. I love that. I love it. We are going to have such a great discussion. So again, Cory, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, I always like to ask my guests how it is that they got to where they are today. I mentioned 30 years of business experience, but tell us a little bit more about what led you here.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. I will. It's actually a longer story than that. I usually say 30 and stop at that. However, according to LinkedIn, I've been in the career, in the workforce for 39 years this year.
You were a little person when you started.
Yes. Yeah. So it's going to be 40 years in 2026.
Wow. Okay.
And it's hard for me to believe, but life goes fast. It doesn't wait around for anybody. And that's a piece of my story of just having some urgency when it comes to some goals, life goals, being intentional about life instead of sitting around. So I started off, I was born at a very young age. Okay, I'm kidding. I love to say that. But basically back in 1985 or 86 is when I was in my junior and senior year of high school.
Okay.
And I'm pretty sure that's when I started and began working with my dad in his family marketing business.
Okay.
My stepdad, Bob Bauer. And I just started off as an employee, was kind of a gopher, helped out in different areas of our marketing agency. And mind you, that was about 5 years before the internet thing came along.
Right. Al Gore hadn't invented it yet.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, he hadn't invented a lot of things yet. But stay tuned to that. That's funny. But yeah, so it was before the internet when faxes and facsimiles were a big deal. And in our marketing agency, we pasted out a lot of things. We had to print them out, paste them on boards, do all kinds of things. And it's just crazy for me to think and even tell my kids of what it was like to, what did we do before the internet and what kind of dinosaurs are walking around? I said, not all of them. Most of them were extinct by then, but not all. But it's just been a long journey. And if once again, if you aren't intentional, which is as I've looked back, then I've learned a lot. So let me start with that. However, my initial thought was, oh my gosh, look how much time I've wasted. Look how many opportunities I've said no to.
Interesting.
Yeah, a lot of different things that I'll go through. And I'll kind of hit on some snippets and maybe if you have any more clarifying questions you have. But so just kind of went through life, mostly focused on financial goals. I hit those pretty quickly. I was satisfied, but also too, with my life, I was kind of very reserved in how I spent money. I really wanted the big stuff, so I didn't nickel and dime myself on a lot of things. So I was big onto saving and investing.
Oh, great.
However, yes. However, when I took that to the extreme, I kept doing that. And
Mm-hmm.
that was the only goal in my life. I
Ah,
didn't have any other areas
okay.
of my life, whether it was
Mm-hmm.
spiritual,
Mm-hmm.
family,
Mm-hmm.
relationships, fun,
Mm-hmm.
friends,
Mm-hmm.
as I call the 5 to 7 or 8 different F's that you
Mm-hmm.
can do
Mm-hmm.
is
Right.
fitness,
Mm-hmm.
finances,
Mm-hmm.
future, all those different
Mm-hmm.
things. And I only had finances. And I,
Mm-hmm.
I really limited
Mm-hmm.
myself thinking, oh, that's money's going to get me everything. Money's
Mm-hmm.
going to get me everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I became kind of a workaholic.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I finally got married, my wife and the dissonance we had of how we spend money, and
Mm-hmm.
she wanted trips for the family, she
Right.
wanted experiences
Mm-hmm.
and memories, and I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
that goes against my
But
goal.
I have to save. Mm-hmm. And now it's we
Yes,
have to save. Mm-hmm.
yeah, save somewhat and
Mm-hmm.
portionally
Mm-hmm.
for future things. Also, we
Mm-hmm.
have to have expenses in
Mm-hmm.
the current time and some experiences. So I'm thankful for my
Mm-hmm.
wife
Mm-hmm.
because if it wasn't for her, I would live in a place that had no pictures on the wall. They'd all be white. They'd be very
Mm-hmm.
simple. I might have one chair and
Mm-hmm.
never go on any trips
Mm-hmm.
until I'm 80 or 90 years old. But
Mm-hmm.
of course, that gets kind of difficult for
Mm-hmm.
most people,
Mm-hmm.
both financially as
Mm-hmm.
inflation comes, and of
Mm-hmm.
course, health wise.
Right.
So that's kind of where I started
Mm-hmm.
and grew up in Ann Arbor, Michigan,
Mm-hmm.
and which is the southeast end or side of Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
And I was born in Chicago, but
Mm-hmm.
as a baby, we came over
Mm-hmm.
on my family's side of
Mm-hmm.
things and to be supported
Mm-hmm.
over here.
Mm-hmm.
So grew up here. I went to the local schools in Ann Arbor, Michigan, which is where the University of Michigan is,
Right. Mm-hmm.
and ended up going to, which is only 10 minutes away, both of them,
Mm-hmm.
University of Michigan and then Eastern Michigan
Mm-hmm.
University,
Mm-hmm.
which is where I ended up going for
Mm-hmm.
manufacturing technology, which
Ah.
is, if you think of engineering,
Mm-hmm.
manufacturing technology is
Mm-hmm.
is probably just below it, dealing with
Right.
the
Mm-hmm.
manufacturing
Mm-hmm.
world, because
Right.
that's
How do
the
you make things?
yes, and that's where we're coming
Mm-hmm.
out of at that point, is
Mm-hmm.
the whole kind of industrial age
Mm-hmm.
instead of the information age, which we
Mm-hmm.
were coming into.
Mm-hmm.
So that was all very interested in, and some of my hobbies and passions. I was
Mm-hmm.
very quiet.
Mm-hmm.
I was introverted
Mm-hmm.
and mostly focused through this lens of fear
Mm-hmm.
instead of
Mm-hmm.
fear and scarcity
Mm-hmm.
instead
Mm-hmm.
of abundance and
Mm-hmm.
strength and
Mm-hmm.
confidence.
Mm-hmm.
And then one of the things as I look back on my life, I've been a Christian for more than probably 35, 40 years
Mm-hmm.
now.
Mm-hmm.
However, I've always kept that separate from
Ah,
kind of who I was in both
okay.
business and even outside of
Mm-hmm.
work and even in my church
Mm-hmm.
communities. I stayed quiet about it because I just
Mm-hmm.
never wanted to be, back then it wasn't called canceled,
Mm-hmm.
but I never wanted to be canceled back then
Right.
or
Prejudged,
judged, prejudged.
whatever. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Exactly,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. So that was one of the biggest
Mm-hmm.
realizations for me. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh my gosh, I've been living this unfulfilled life.
Mm-hmm.
I had some exterior and
Mm-hmm.
external success factors,
Mm-hmm.
but then it was empty after I
Mm-hmm.
reached. I'm like, okay, what
Mm-hmm.
now? And then we
Mm-hmm.
got to a point of even 2 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
paid off our house earlier than what the 30-year mortgage was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we paid it off in 18 years early. So
Oh
paid it off
my.
at about
Mm-hmm.
about 12
Mm-hmm.
years. And that felt really good because I've never liked debt.
Right.
And
Mm-hmm.
and then doing that, I'm like, this is going to be so awesome.
Yeah, we're gonna
And
have all
that,
that money.
yes, yes. And that did create some savings
Mm-hmm.
and not spending just
Mm-hmm.
on a mortgage.
Mm-hmm.
But then when I got there, I'm like, wow, that wasn't as exciting as I thought it was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
So that, along with some other
Mm-hmm.
challenges, and also too the pandemic
Mm-hmm.
and the volatile
Mm-hmm.
world market. It wasn't just here in Michigan,
Mm-hmm.
it's the world, and everybody's going through all kinds of
Mm-hmm.
changes and technology and AI
Mm-hmm.
and all that kind of stuff. So going back again, going through college, I did that in
Mm-hmm.
about 5.5 years at Eastern Michigan University. Through that, I've had like 2 or 3 motorcycles by that time because I was into that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I
Still
was
getting
flying.
that stuff. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
stuff. Yeah, the
Mm-hmm.
fast life, so to speak, even though I was quiet on
Mm-hmm.
the inside, but on the outside, ooh, this is kind of
Mm-hmm.
fun. But and through high school even, I
Mm-hmm.
played football.
Mm-hmm.
And in my senior year, I was never a go-getter. I was never really somebody who wanted to be out in the limelight. I'd never
Mm-hmm.
wanted to start in a
Mm-hmm.
game. I
So
didn't
you
mind
were
coming in.
not the quarterback.
I was not well, actually, it's funny. I was actually at some point,
Ah,
and I'll tell that
okay.
story a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But initially I played running back
Okay.
was my big thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then early on, as like a sophomore, I ended
Mm-hmm.
up playing quarterback because they
Mm-hmm.
needed extra quarterbacks, and I
Mm-hmm.
was a fast runner and
Mm-hmm.
quick.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, Corey, we need a second person.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to be so upset with that and this is kind of one of my stories I
Mm-hmm.
share
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, that I wasn't looking to be a leader. I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
looking to do more. I was
Mm-hmm.
just looking to do the least amount that I
Right.
could.
And
And
that is
so,
not the quarterback.
no, right, right. And the other piece of
Mhm.
that is I was also still had running back duty. So I was a second string or
Oh. Mm-hmm.
whatever running back. So I
Mm-hmm.
had to learn both sets of plays. The quarterback knows everybody's moves,
Mm-hmm.
which is pretty, it takes a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And then the running back has to
Mm-hmm.
know his own moves on
Mm-hmm.
every single play.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I one time complained to my coach about it. And I was like, why do I have to play two positions
Yeah.
here on
Mm-hmm.
offense and learn all these plays?
Mm-hmm.
Because once again, I was trying to do the least
Mm-hmm.
amount. But he took me aside
Mm-hmm.
quietly and he said, hey, Cory, you are one of the smartest people and you pick up things quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, if somebody was watching and was a wallflower there, you would have seen my chest start to pump up. I'm like, what?
Yes, yes. Oh,
What?
coach is
Yeah.
saying nice things. Mm-hmm.
Yes. And I just didn't know from that perspective. But after that, I had a whole different perspective on
Mm-hmm.
what it looked like to do more or to go the extra mile.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
people may not always tell you verbally that they
Mm-hmm.
respect you or they see your strengths,
Right. Mm-hmm.
but we have to realize, and I didn't at the time, that that
Mm-hmm.
was an
Mm-hmm.
opportunity for me to both
Mm-hmm.
help the bigger organization, our football team, but not just focus on
Mm-hmm.
myself
Mm-hmm.
selfishly. So that was one of
Mm-hmm.
the earlier experiences that I could
Mm-hmm.
remember that helped me to say, "Oh wow,
Mm-hmm.
Cory, you do have value.
Right.
You do have skill
Mm-hmm.
sets. You're not the loudest or the most
Mm-hmm.
assertive,
Mm-hmm.
but people do see
Mm-hmm.
you and recognize you." So
Mm-hmm.
that was a huge thing that just happened by
Mm-hmm.
chance because I
Mm-hmm.
complained. So kind of glad I said something, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be known as the complainer though.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right. Right. Mm-hmm.
yeah.
But the
So
the
yeah,
loudest, most assertive is not always the best, right?
correct.
We've got this saying, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. I think that's what it is. Um, but there's a lot of other things that go with being loud and assertive, and quite frequently leadership is not part of that because sometimes that person is all about me.
Yes.
And a leader is not all about me.
Yep. Yep. And it's funny too, because as you say that I'm working on other talks and programs,
Mm-hmm.
and some of the references I have just working back in the day, as I
Mm-hmm.
called old school,
Mm-hmm.
was about the leader.
Mm-hmm.
That just because you had a title,
Mm-hmm.
you could just bark
Mm-hmm.
out commands,
Right.
and most bosses didn't ask for feedback
Mm-hmm.
back then,
Mm-hmm.
as far as I was
Mm-hmm.
the exposures
Right.
that I've had.
Because they knew it
And
all.
yes, and that was just the culture and what was
Mm-hmm.
bred. Hey,
Mm-hmm.
you're the boss, you tell
Mm-hmm.
people what to do,
Mm-hmm.
they do it. If they do it
Mm-hmm.
wrong, you kind of intimidate them one way or
Mm-hmm.
another and make them realize that
Mm-hmm.
their job is on the line, it's
Mm-hmm.
dangling. And of
Right.
course, that's
Mm-hmm.
fear-based.
Mm-hmm.
So I've talked about that and I've lived through that. And I've
Mm-hmm.
been one of those people like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, I'm the boss now. I
Mm-hmm.
made it up to the top,
Mm-hmm. And
Wasn't
you
looking for
will do what I say.
yes, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And that worked to a
Mm-hmm.
degree.
Mm-hmm.
However, is that enduring? Is that
Mm-hmm.
long term?
Right.
And in
Right.
most cases,
It's
it's not.
not.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
especially with our culture coming into
Mm-hmm.
this, I want some autonomy. I want to
Mm-hmm.
be able to have
Mm-hmm.
some control
Right.
over my future,
Mm-hmm.
my destiny.
Mm-hmm.
And when I go into work,
Mm-hmm.
most people want to have a purpose
Mm-hmm.
or a mission, something
Mm-hmm.
valuable
Mm-hmm.
that they're spending
Right.
most of their
Mm-hmm.
day doing
Mm-hmm.
because people realize they can never get their time back.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
sure, they want to pay
Mm-hmm.
expenses, have
Mm-hmm.
security.
Mm-hmm.
However, they want to have purpose
Mm-hmm.
and meaning and
Right.
impact. So
Mm-hmm.
that's
Mm-hmm.
important.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so going through my high school years, finally and learned some things in
Mm-hmm.
football and had some work ethic,
Mm-hmm.
saving money, and I was able to buy like my motorcycle and my car,
Mm-hmm.
pay it on I think both of them on loan, but I
Mm-hmm.
was able to get them paid within
Mm-hmm.
a couple of
Mm-hmm.
years, basically, nothing too
Right.
long. And then my senior year of high school, roughly, my buddy and I, Rich, started going to the hobby stores and learned to build and fly remote control airplanes out of
Ooh.
balsa
Mm-hmm.
kits. Yeah, balsa
Mm-hmm.
wood kits,
Mm-hmm.
and then put the electronics in and the
Mm-hmm.
motors, had gas engines, and then
Mm-hmm.
we're taught to fly them. And that was like
Mm-hmm.
the most awesome thing in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned all about aviation.
Mm-hmm.
And then a few years later, when I'm 23, I graduate Eastern Michigan,
Mm-hmm.
go from 86 to 92, roughly,
Mm-hmm.
91,
Mm-hmm.
92. And that last year, I was like, ooh, what would it be like to fly airplanes for real? Because
Ooh.
some of the guys in our group,
Mm-hmm.
our remote control aviation
Right.
group
Right.
and modeling
Mm-hmm.
club, they're older and they're like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
we have some of us have pilot's license. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, what? For
Mm-hmm.
real? You
You
you fly
fly
these
the
things for real?
real things? Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And part of this too is as I'm narrating my story,
Mm-hmm.
it's just the interesting pieces of community, who
Mhm.
you connect with, so
Mhm.
connecting those
Mhm.
dots along the life, it's amazing
Right.
how
Mhm.
if you're right around the right
Mhm.
people and you're willing to ask
Mhm.
questions
Mhm.
and learn,
Mhm.
it's amazing what
Mhm.
directions you can go in or
Right.
how many
Mhm.
different ways they can just
Mhm.
encourage you just with some
Mhm.
words and within a
Or
short period of
discourage you, right?
yes, yes.
Mhm. Mhm.
That is huge.
Mhm.
And that's obviously a big one, who we
Mhm.
hang out with and
Mhm.
the audios we listen to, the books you
Mhm.
read, those
Mhm.
all those different inputs and
Mhm.
the videos.
Mhm.
And so some of these guys encouraged me and I said, "Oh, I'll just go down to our local Ann Arbor airport
Mhm.
and go to one of the flight schools and
Mhm.
see how do you become a pilot."
Yeah.
And one of the first dumb questions I asked, it was in November, and
Mhm.
I asked, "Well, can you take flying lessons in November?"
Right. It's
And
cold up here and
yeah,
snowy.
yes, yes, even though they had heaters in the airplane, but
Mhm.
my instructor said, "Yeah, it's pretty weird, but yeah, we all we need is air and oxygen,
Mhm.
and we can pretty much fly. So it doesn't matter
Mhm.
what temperature it
Right.
is." Of course, I didn't think about that because I'm like, I
Mhm.
didn't know the principles of
Mhm.
flight. So I took my first lesson, and the one thing I forgot, but I was curious though, so I
Mhm.
took the lesson. But
Mhm.
I totally forgot that I never liked roller coasters growing up.
Uh-oh.
Never, never liked heights, and I got car sickness quite a bit. Just yeah, and these little airplanes. If you think
They go
airliners,
uppy downy, but oh yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, the
Mhm.
airliners are pretty smooth. They
Mhm.
barely move,
Oh,
but
little
yeah,
planes
the
can
little ones,
drop 100 feet. Just.
yes, exactly.
Mhm.
Nobody
Mhm.
told me this. So I took a little demo flight and
Mhm.
I was like, wow, I think I got nauseous. I didn't get sick. I didn't
Mhm.
get sick, but I was just,
Mhm. A little
woozy and everything.
green.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I had to take a nap like for 3 or 4 hours the rest of the afternoon. And then by the time I slept, and
Mhm.
I think that was a Saturday, but the next
Mhm.
day was a Sunday. And when I woke up
Mhm.
Sunday, I'm like, I felt refreshed, energized, and I'm like,
Mhm.
that was the coolest freaking thing I've ever done in my
I love
life.
it. I love it.
So the some of the interesting pieces of it is that as I took lessons, my body started to adapt and
Right.
adjust to
Mhm.
the motion that was
Mhm. Mhm.
happening. And I got nauseous, just sick a little
Mhm.
bit, not really
Mhm.
anything violent, but it was just
Mhm.
okay. I didn't feel so well, but I
Mhm.
kept doing that on
Mhm.
average about once
Mhm.
a week for a
Mhm.
year, and I ended up getting my
Mhm.
private pilot's
Mhm.
license. And the coolest part,
Persistence.
yes,
Persistence. Mhm.
persistence and
Mhm.
determination.
Mhm.
And because of my finances, again,
Mhm.
I was able to pay for those flight lessons
Mhm.
and my college
Mhm.
all off. So I didn't have any
Wow.
loans for
Mhm.
college, and I was
Mhm.
able to pay for that
Mhm.
pilot's license. I think at
Mhm.
the time, roughly 33 years ago at this point, 92,
Mhm.
my expenses roughly are around 3,000 or
Mhm.
$3,500 for my flying
Mhm.
lessons for that
Mhm.
year.
Mhm.
Now they're roughly about double the triple.
Right.
So anywhere from
Mhm.
six to
Mhm.
nine to twelve thousand
Mhm.
dollars. So I'm glad that I did it. And they said,
Mhm.
if you stop
Mhm.
doing these lessons, your skill sets will go down quite a bit.
Right,
And
because
you have
your
to,
brain needs to keep doing that.
yes.
Mhm.
And so they said, if you can, if at all possible,
Mhm.
stick to it
Mhm.
until you get that license.
Mhm.
Because once you do, you've got the license and it
Mhm.
never expires
Mhm.
unless you give it up.
Mhm.
It's just you have to be
Mhm.
current in
Right. Mhm.
landings and
Mhm.
flying in recent
Mhm.
recent
All the
times. But
new goo gadgets and
yeah, yeah.
technology and
Yeah, you just have to show
mhm.
that you're safe. You don't
Mhm.
have to have the high
Mhm.
standards of when you took that
Right.
private pilot
Mhm.
test, but
Mhm.
just that you're safe and you can
Mhm.
operate and however you fly the
Mhm.
airplane.
Mhm.
And so since I just fly every once in
Mhm.
a while and it's for hobby,
Mhm.
we just work on some of those things when I get
Mhm.
recurrent
Mhm.
training
Mhm.
rather than
Mhm.
let's fly across country and do all this
Right.
other stuff.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. So you have to be smart about those things.
Mhm.
But learning through that was another big learning
Mhm.
lesson of even though something's challenging at
Mhm.
first, when you keep hitting it and hitting it
Mhm.
and hitting it or hammering and hammering
Mhm.
and hammering,
Mhm.
soon enough, that is going to make a
Right.
difference. And you,
Mhm.
in most cases, break through
Mhm.
some type of wall.
Mhm.
So I had to learn that
Mhm.
just because I had the passion for it,
Mhm.
but that also helped me
Mhm.
learn both for business and
Mhm.
goals and other types of things that you can grow, you can learn, or
Mhm.
you can get to the point where at
Mhm.
least it's not emotional.
Mhm.
Similar to me
Right.
talking and speaking, being an
Mhm.
introvert,
Mhm.
I never wanted to be a speaker until
Mhm.
about 2, 3 years ago.
Ah. Mhm.
And so, yeah, so it's very interesting. And
Mhm.
that's, I just turned 57
Mhm.
earlier this week on the
Mhm.
14th.
Oh, happy
Yeah,
belated birthday. Mhm.
thank you, thank you. But yeah, so technically
Mhm.
I was 54
Mhm.
by the time I realized I wanted to be a speaker.
Mhm.
And I'm like, one of the biggest things of my story throughout all of
Mhm.
this is that I've always listened to the stories of me telling myself about my lack,
Ah.
about my confidence level being
Mm-hmm.
low,
Mm-hmm.
about me not being good at
Mm-hmm.
many different
Mm-hmm.
things. And because I'd done XYZ
Mm-hmm.
for 10, 20, 30
Mm-hmm.
years, I would never be
Why would
good.
you think you could do? Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, big time. And
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of people do that, and we
Right.
many times don't realize those subconscious
Mm-hmm.
limiting beliefs
Mm-hmm.
that we have,
Mm-hmm. Right.
and really the stories we tell ourselves. So through affirmations and all
Mm-hmm.
that. So
Mm-hmm.
I had a multitude of stories and evidence in so
Mm-hmm.
many different areas that I was
Mm-hmm.
successful in many different ventures and areas, but
Mm-hmm.
I always gave the energy and kept feeding
Mm-hmm.
those stories. Or as I've heard
Mm-hmm.
another story about two wolves. We all have two wolves.
Mm-hmm.
One that will empower us, and the
Mm-hmm.
wolf that will take us down
Right.
and
Mm-hmm.
really destroy us.
Mm-hmm.
And whichever wolf you choose to feed
Mm-hmm.
through affirmations,
Mm-hmm.
belief,
Mm-hmm.
the evidence you
Mm-hmm.
create, the activities we take,
Right.
um, that's so
Mm-hmm.
important. And then
Mm-hmm.
one of the other things too that messed me up is
Mm-hmm.
that I never, two things. I never wanted to apologize, so I never wanted to make mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
Never wanted to apologize.
Mm-hmm.
And then I never wanted to make mistakes, and therefore I shut myself down to almost
Right.
every
That's very
uh
limiting. Mm-hmm.
yes, yeah, very
Mm-hmm.
limiting. So
Mm-hmm.
any risks, I was very
Mm-hmm.
risk averse and
Right.
said, no, I'm not going to try anything
Mm-hmm.
new because I could fail. I could fail
Mm-hmm.
rather than realizing that's the
Mm-hmm.
equation for success is it's a learning
Mm-hmm.
experience, and that's how we
Right.
get better.
Mm-hmm.
No different than how
Mm-hmm.
we learned to
Mm-hmm.
walk as babies. We
Right.
had to fall down a
Yeah,
few
you have to
times.
fall. Sometimes it hurts really bad.
Yes, yes,
But
but
we don't just start walking and run, right?
right.
We have to learn and and yeah, learn from what people would call a failure.
Yes, yes. And so I've had to switch that around even in my 50s. I've
Mhm.
learned some of these lessons here and there, but then I would, nope, I'm
Mhm.
not going to feed that.
Mhm.
I'm going to feed the
Mhm.
lack and
Mhm.
insecurity. But now over the last few years, I'm
Mhm.
like, what am I waiting around for
Right.
a lot of my major goals,
Mhm.
and then doing what I'm
Mhm.
passionate about.
Mhm.
And when I look back at
Mhm.
some of these things, I'm like, okay, what do I really want to do? Am I going to
Mhm.
wait till I'm 70,
Mhm.
80, 90?
Mhm.
Or am I going to take action now? Because we
Right.
all think we have
Mhm.
forever, like time
Mhm.
is standing still,
Mhm.
but it's not. It ain't.
Right.
It just
Right.
ain't happening.
Right. Do it while you can enjoy it.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes, yeah,
Mhm.
and that's actually a cool thing. Just yesterday, I put on my a dream list. Probably in the last 6 months, I've always wanted, since I've flown airplanes, I've flown
Mhm.
different types, but I've wanted
Mhm.
a biplane or to be able to
Ooh.
fly one.
Oh, how
Yeah,
fun.
yeah, yeah. So I chose this Waco
Mhm.
biplane that's I believe
Mhm.
he started in 1929, so a
Mhm.
World War II
Mhm.
aircraft
Mhm.
that that I believe that's World War II. I'm
Mhm.
getting my airplanes mixed up, but the point is they're beautiful. They
Mhm.
fly low, they fly
Mhm.
slow, and you can
Mhm.
see the scenery, and they're
Mhm.
just oh my gosh. So I had this on my list 5, 6 months ago,
Mhm.
and I'm looking at places. Okay, the west side of Michigan, there's a
Mhm.
guy who has one. He'll train, and he won't train you on it. He'll just take you for some lessons. But I'm like,
Ah.
okay,
Mhm.
that'll be $400 for 1 hour lesson.
Ooh.
But I can't fly and go solo with it. So I'm like, how can I get something I
Right.
can do that?
Mhm.
But down in Texas, I
Mhm.
saw some more instruction where they
Mhm.
have a bunch of different World War II very
Ah,
old
okay.
aircraft
Okay.
biplanes and
Mhm.
things that you could fly, and that's right around $7,000 to eight thousand
Mhm.
dollars to get trained up for a
Mhm.
week, and then they'll even
Mhm.
check you out so you can fly
Mhm.
solo. And that's kind of one of my yeah,
Mhm.
I climbed that mountain.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
but then by having it on my goal list
Mhm.
and my focus,
Mhm.
whereas most people set their goals of I'm not going to look at all these cars or homes or
Mhm.
travel or anything
Mhm.
until I have the money. Well, you're
Mhm.
just messing yourself up because you won't
Right.
develop the motivation
Yeah, and
and
things will get in the way and
yeah,
mhm.
yeah. And that's called life. Those things,
Mhm.
that's called life.
Yeah. Mhm.
That
Mhm.
gets in the way. But the
Right.
coolest part is that I kept searching it and I
Mhm.
found just an hour and a half away from me in
Ah.
Michigan
Mhm.
that there's a place that
Mhm.
build those Waco
Mhm.
aircraft. And I reached out to them. I said, "Hey,
Mhm.
can you send me a
Mhm.
brochure?" And they said, "Better yet, why don't you come down
Mhm.
to the factory and just tour it for a couple of
Oh.
hours and then we'll give you a demo flight."
Uh-huh.
So just yesterday,
Oh.
I had scheduled
Mhm.
time to go down and I
Mhm.
went over there. The weather was
Mhm.
beautiful here in
Mhm.
October.
Mhm.
We toured the factory. I
Mhm.
talked to a lot of people, and the manufacturing of those aircraft full scale
Mhm.
looks exactly like the remote control airplanes I built
Right. So
30
it
years
goes
ago.
back to your college degree. It goes back to playing out in the fields, all of that. I love it.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes. And then I took this flight
Mhm.
over the west side of Michigan
Mhm.
there, and it's like, oh my goodness, they're so
Oh yeah.
beautiful.
Oh,
And
the
the biggest thing,
leaves. Mhm.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, and the biggest thing, one of the biggest things, it didn't cost me a dime. But
Mhm.
because I was
Mhm.
willing to focus on
Right.
that, I got
Mhm.
the experience.
Mhm.
And that
Mhm.
particular
Right.
aircraft, which is pretty impressive,
Mhm.
it looks like, it looks pretty
Mhm.
simple. It's a beautiful
Mhm.
aircraft, but they've got the newer instrumentation in it,
Mhm.
and it's set up that you can go almost anywhere, flying instrument
Nice.
conditions in the
Okay.
clouds.
Okay.
But that aircraft
Mhm.
is like $650,000, almost
Oh,
$700,000. Yeah.
that's a
But
big. I don't.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah. And one thing, and that's where I kind of go back to this guy who flew me and
Mhm.
gave me the demo.
Mhm.
He said, yeah, a lot of guys, I said, I'm 57. And he said, yeah, a lot of guys come in either the late 60s, 70s, or 80s
Mhm.
wanting to get this airplane because they've got
Mhm.
the finances to do it,
Right.
or they've got 4 or 5
Free
aircraft.
time. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
and they've got 4 or 5
Mhm.
aircraft and they want to add another one,
Mhm.
but sometimes they're too old and they waited too
Mhm.
long, so now
Right.
they can't even get
Mhm.
in and out of the
Mhm.
airplane.
Mhm.
And so a piece of that is just the whole
Mhm.
idea of, once again, urgency
Mhm. Right.
and what you want to
Mhm.
pursue,
Mhm.
along with
Mhm.
making sure your faith
Mhm.
aspect,
Mhm.
your family,
Right.
other things are in
Mhm.
check, and it's not
Mhm.
just one-sided
Mhm.
or leaning all
Mhm.
toward finances. I got to
Mhm.
be a millionaire. I got to have 10 million. I
Mhm.
got to have.
Mhm.
There's never
Right.
ending
Right.
amounts of money. If
Mhm.
you're abundant minded, there's
Mhm.
always a way
Mhm.
to create that, but you
Right.
can't get your time back.
Mhm. Right.
So just being
And
intentional.
and to
Yeah.
keep looking, like you said, you found
Yes.
that one in Texas, you know, but it just wasn't what you were going to do, and so you kept looking.
Yep.
I work with cancer patients, and so one of the things that I tell them is, do you really want, and specifically I work with senior executives who
Yes.
have cancer, but for anybody, I tell them, do you want your headstone to say, I wish I would have?
Yes.
And we talk about goals and those bucket lists, right? Now, I've learned the hard way that we shouldn't put things off. And like I talked with this one woman one time who her goal was to travel extensively. And
Yes.
she knew what countries she wanted to go to, all these things. But she said, I can probably never afford to do that.
Mm,
And I said, well, there are museums, there are books, there are so many other
yes.
ways where you can still have that experience. Maybe you can't actually go, but how can you still in some way fulfill that dream? And that had never
Yes.
occurred to her. She was like, oh yeah, okay.
Right.
And so it's exactly what you've been saying. It's, can you find an alternative? Texas might be
Yep.
too much, but ooh, look, an hour away. Hey, that works really good.
Yep. And it turned out to be free, which
Mhm.
is crazy. And not
Even
that that'll be,
better.
yeah, not that
Hmm.
that'll be my last experience, but that's so true. So
Hmm.
true.
Hmm.
So yeah, I think, and then one of the biggest things too there is dreaming, period.
Hmm.
Getting out there,
Hmm.
seeing what's available, and
Hmm.
of course YouTube
Hmm.
videos as I
Hmm.
add to the list of some of those
Hmm.
things you can do
Hmm.
and you can actually
Hmm.
experience. And that
Right.
helps a lot
Hmm.
because I
Hmm.
watched a lot of biplane videos.
Hmm.
And so by the time I got
Hmm.
to it, I'm like, this looks very familiar.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so many times, if that is a goal or I
Right.
choose to pursue
Hmm.
that, I don't
Hmm.
have to, but if I
Hmm.
choose to, I now know what it takes to
Hmm.
buy the
Hmm.
airplane or what it takes to
Hmm.
rent. I have many different
Hmm.
choices that'll build me or
Right.
that'll help me out.
Hmm.
And that's probably one of the biggest things for
Hmm.
airplanes is
Hmm.
that I've never owned an aircraft to this
Hmm.
point, but I've flown and have been checked out in six
Hmm.
to eight different types of
Ooh.
aircraft.
Hmm.
So after doing that, I
Hmm.
realized I couldn't own just one airplane. I would have to own probably four or
Yeah,
five because they
and your wife is probably saying, honey,
right, right.
there's not
Yeah.
that much room in the garage.
Right, right. Yep. And that's so true. And but that's the coolest part too, is that having these options, including when
Hmm.
we've traveled. And
Hmm.
I've been married, I believe I was married in 99. So yeah, so 26
Hmm.
years.
Hmm.
Been married 26 years over this 2 months ago,
Hmm.
August of 25
Hmm.
here. And that's been a journey in and of
Hmm.
itself, but
Hmm.
one of the best experiences being
Right.
exposed
Hmm.
through my wife's
Hmm.
vision of things
Hmm.
instead of my limited
Hmm.
vision. So that's been really cool.
Hmm.
And that's a part of my journey too, is
Hmm.
being married and
Hmm.
staying married this long because it's
Hmm.
not easy. I know
Right.
people who,
Hmm.
50% or more
Hmm.
get divorced these
Hmm.
days. That's hard.
Hmm.
That's a hard thing
Hmm.
to deal with in relationships. But
Hmm.
I think potentially that being married over
Hmm.
25 years is even harder
Hmm.
because you got to
Right.
still work
I've hit
together.
32.
Awesome. Awesome. Good for you. Good for you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's a challenge.
Yeah.
And like with everything, we can give up
Hmm.
or we can say, what can we do to fix this?
Yes, and especially if it's worthwhile, those things that are worthwhile, and it takes
Right.
two.
Mhm.
Some
Mhm.
people,
Right.
I've heard usually one person wants to
Mhm.
be in the relationship more,
Mhm.
or
Mhm.
the grass is greener
Right.
somehow.
Mhm.
Something's happened.
Mhm.
It's hard to blame
Mhm.
one person or the
Mhm.
other because
Mhm.
interests change or
Mhm.
dedication and
Right.
commitment
Mhm.
change. So we have
Mhm.
to respect
Mhm.
everybody's
Mhm. Right.
direction that they're going in.
And sometimes it is the best move to split up. Just like, sell your company, get a new job, whatever. Sometimes those are the best decisions.
Yes, yes. So, so that's I think, those are some of the important things in my life.
Mhm.
And I've learned a ton along the way,
Mhm.
including in business. So,
Mhm.
and then the last piece, I guess I could add, unless other
Mhm.
things come up, that I've been in my dad's business or family marketing, moved up from employee
Okay.
to
Oh, so
manager.
you're
And
still with that. I love it.
yes,
Uh-huh.
yes, a part owner
Mhm.
of the company.
Mhm.
And then in the last 3 years,
Mhm.
I've been transitioning to
Mhm.
executive leadership
Mhm.
coaching
Right.
and keynote
Mhm.
speaking
Mhm.
and trying to
Mhm.
find what I enjoy. And what I
Mhm.
realize when I look
Mhm.
back at my life, I'm like, Corey, what do you enjoy
Mhm.
doing the most that you're passionate about?
Mhm.
And all I could ever do most of the
Mhm.
time was just think, well, I just want to make more money. But I'm like, that doesn't excite me. Making
Mhm.
money does not excite
Mhm.
me. It's the experiences,
Mhm.
or who can I benefit? What
Right.
causes can I
Mhm.
give to my
Mhm.
church?
Mhm.
Help other people, other
Mhm.
families.
Mhm.
So my purpose and passion has totally
Mhm.
been developed by looking at
Mhm.
what I've enjoyed. So for
Mhm.
the last 30 since probably 1994, so it's at about 31
Mhm.
years or whatever it's been,
Mhm.
that I've done Bible study leadership
Mhm.
and Bible
Mhm.
study for
Mhm.
middle schoolers and high
Oh, I
schoolers.
love that. Mhm.
Yeah, so I love
Mhm.
youth, I love the
Mhm.
family unit
Mhm.
and having that
Mhm.
leadership development in the kids
Mhm.
because as we've seen over the last
Mhm.
30, 40 years, and especially with the internet and
Mhm.
digital and tech,
Mhm.
our kids are not
Oof,
communicating and
I
engaging. And
know.
as you talk
Mhm.
about the
Mhm.
leadership skills,
Mhm.
we're not used to interacting as
Mhm.
much. So we have this newer culture
Mhm.
of mostly it's a one-way communication.
Mhm.
It's not a
Mhm.
two-way
Right.
communication.
Right.
So that's why I'm
Mhm.
also excited
Mhm.
about the direction I'm
Mhm.
going. And then I realized, okay, with some of my limitations, like, oh,
Mhm.
I can only work with kids and they only resonate with me.
Mhm.
Even though for the last 25, 30 years, I've been in leadership positions and
Right.
I've
And those are
disregarded.
adults.
Yes, yeah, yeah, and I've disregarded that. Maybe just because I
Mhm.
wasn't as passionate about it.
Mhm. Mhm.
So now I'm saying, hey, wow, I'd love to
Mhm.
work with these top
Mhm.
executives,
Mhm.
executive leadership, and
Right.
business owners,
Mhm.
because I've been a business
Mhm.
owner for over 30
Mhm.
years. I've been in
Mhm.
leadership for over 30. And there's a lot of people
Mhm.
having struggles
Mhm.
with what they're pursuing.
Right.
And many times
Mhm.
now, because of YouTube and
Mhm.
TikTok,
Mhm.
most of what we see is about, oh, look, if you get into this opportunity, you can make $100,000
Right.
next
I
month.
know it has become, and it's always been that way, but we see it more and more that it is the things that you have, the money that you earn.
Yeah.
Um, I always, like when a commercial for the housewives of wherever come
Yeah.
on, I've never watched one of those shows. I will never watch one of those shows. And I always wonder who the heck watches those shows. But obviously people do. You do see, and but it is in many cases. Now granted, I'm watching the commercials, so the commercials are the
Yeah.
highlights or why they
Yeah.
want you to watch all those things. It
Yeah.
does seem like they're always talking about what you have, who you have
Hmm.
sometimes, right? um and it's that culture.
Yeah.
It's funny, you were talking about Ann Arbor and University of Michigan. I'm a University of Colorado person,
Yep.
so we have a really shiny coach, right? Coach Prime. um and I like him. I mean, I think a lot of what he is teaching those young men is very, very
Mm.
important. But his son, now actually I've never met any of them. I hope to at some point.
Yep.
But I think when Shadur got a lot of flack for he would come up to he'd come to practice in his Rolls Royce. He would yeah he did the whole watch flash thing. Well, that was because it was
Wow.
a $90,000 watch.
Wow.
And he grew up with a dad who had a lot of money. And but obviously faith is the priority for them. But I think one of the most interesting things has been to see how Shadur is changing now that he's not the
Mm.
top thing.
Yep.
And he's finding humility, he's finding things like
Mm.
that. And then the other one was, of course, Travis Hunter. Great. It's fun to have a Heisman Trophy winner as part of your team, and things like that. very different young man. The first thing he did when he got his big pro contract was he bought his mother's house for her.
Awesome.
And so you just see, but yeah, and I don't like NIL. I understand why it's there, right?
Yep.
But at the same point, what are we teaching those young men? And young women, we've got Caitlin Clark, we've got, other people like that. But, I love that you work with young kids, because that's where they learn a lot of this. And it's funny because I wrote down coach when you were talking about your football coach. And I wonder, he was such a positive role model for you in the fact that, he I'm sure he criticized, there's got to be criticism in there, all those various things, but you saw the positive that he did. Do you think that how much did that really shape you going forward and then thinking, I want to help others in the same way?
I think if I were to be honest with you right now, I haven't thought about that very much throughout the years. However, I believe it was a seed that was planted.
Right.
And so when I started really going down into the deep recesses of my mind and memory, it's like, oh my goodness, this is a story that probably a lot of people go through and don't get the hype, the kudos, don't realize they have gifts and that they can share them and do well at them.
Right.
But that's one thing where I try to focus on both with myself and that here's one thing I even just was preparing a talk that I've dealt with is that most of us, when something good is happening, most of us don't compliment or thank people is what I've noticed.
Right.
I'm in that boat.
Or even ourselves.
Yes, big time. Yeah, we're the biggest criticizers of our own selves. And then when something bad happens, we are easy to jump. Oh, I've got something to tell you, or hey, let me show you where you've got a problem to fix it. So my whole thing, which includes faith parts of that, is to be complete in that whole engagement. So earn the trust by giving the compliments regularly and deposit into that trust account. Then when that time comes that when you need to either be critical or have improvements or adjust, doesn't mean that's just going to go over like, oh, hey, it's so perfect. You got so many trust deposits and compliments. That's not going to work always that way. However, I feel earned that right.
Right.
And even though I've done that with people, they still sometimes take offense to it. And I can't blame them because for over 30, 40 years, I've still taken offense when somebody points something critical about me rather than looking at it as a learning experience.
Right.
However, I think I've come to my ultimate in that recently I've done some talks. I've done more talks in this past 6 months than I've done in the past 30 years. Yeah. Yeah. I'm so serious about this and helping leaders to get better, not just at work and their careers and their businesses, but
because
also in
as
their
you've been
home
saying,
life.
it's everything, right? If you were a leader at home, at church, at work, it all ties together.
Yes. So everywhere that they are to show up. And when we do that, that's all going to reinforce. So a rising tide raises all ships. When you have these great habits, it impacts everything.
Right.
So one of the most recent talks I did, I got bad reviews on my talk.
Oh, no.
Which historically, generally in the past, if I ever did a talk, I didn't want any feedback on it. I'm like, ooh, I got through that. I was an introvert and didn't want to do it anyway. But I said, no, let me ask what worked in this talk, what didn't work in this talk. And as it turns out, a gentleman told me, he said, I can't give you a referral. And that's all he said. So I'm like, okay,
oh, no.
He didn't answer my questions. So I came back to him and I emailed again. And normally I'm not a glutton for punishment.
Right.
But I'm like, I truly want to improve.
If it could help. Yes.
I truly want to improve. And I'm committed to this. So it's not about me getting my feelings hurt. It's taken me a long time. And I hope other people can get this quicker.
Oh, yeah.
But I took a risk, emailed back, hey, if I understand you won't refer me, but I said, if it's possible, let me know what worked or didn't work, because I truly am committed. And he did respond back with things that could have been included, some criticisms, but also to what would be better that I should have included from the people.
I love that.
Who listened to me. Yeah. And I thanked him back and said, this is awesome. You are so amazing that you were
Mm-hmm.
willing to share this
Mm-hmm.
with me. And this is the
Mm-hmm.
best birthday gift because it's just earlier this
Mm-hmm.
week
Mm-hmm.
that I could ever receive
Mm-hmm.
because I am seriously
Mm-hmm.
committed to learning and growing.
Mm-hmm.
So I appreciate
Mm-hmm.
you taking the risk
Mm-hmm.
and sharing this with me because
Right.
he was like
Mm-hmm.
hesitant, like, "Ooh, Corey, I
Mm-hmm.
know this is hard to see
Mm-hmm.
all this." I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
not at this point. Maybe a year or
Right.
two ago would have been hard,
Mm-hmm.
but I am
Mm-hmm.
looking for this stuff
Mm-hmm.
because how will I
Mm-hmm.
know when
Right.
you're going around
Yeah.
blind and you don't have
Mm-hmm.
honesty? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it's fun to get the 5 stars and all of that. But
Hmm.
I think a lot of times, like when we do reviews, right?
Yeah.
We just do good, great. We don't even, partially because we think we don't want to hurt their feelings, but
Yeah.
it's easier to just do the 5 stars. I got heckled one time at a presentation I was giving,
Wow.
and it was and I learned a lot from it. I was talking to a group of unemployed engineers
Yeah.
about how to use LinkedIn as part of their job search. And and I don't know, there's a group of maybe 20, 30, and it was a group that met regularly. So they all knew each other.
Hmm.
And I'm partway through the presentation and a guy comes in. Now he's late. And he's also one of those that makes an entrance, right? And so we kind of paused, let him get settled, all that good stuff. And then I was going on further, and my habit when I was giving the presentations I would say we need to do this, we should do this, here's and all those things. And Mr. Late raises his hand. Actually, he just interrupts me, and he
Yeah.
says, "You're not an engineer. How can you say we?"
Mm.
And I thought, okay, he's got a point. And so I acknowledged that. And then I went on a little bit further, but then I started trying to mentally shift to you, which is really hard in the middle of a presentation, right?
Yep.
But I also realized that for that group I needed more numbers as opposed to feel good, right? Because they're
Yep.
engineers. But he interrupted me 3 times, and he was just one of those people. And I finally said, "Sir, clearly this is not what you want. I'm happy to refund your money, but please exit." And people clapped. And I thought, oh dear, he's like that all the time, right? And luckily he didn't throw me off. I just, kept going. So I leave, and there he is out by my car. And I thought, ah! And darned if he didn't apologize. And he said,
Wow.
he said, "I'm really sorry." He said, "This has been a very tough time for me, and I took it out on you." And I said,
Oh,
"Okay, thank you. How can I help you?" And I think that's the thing we need to remember when somebody's criticizing and all of those things. We don't know what they're going through, but he did
right.
help me. I realized, okay, these are changes I need to make in my presentation. And so whether, it's, you need to, you're working on a product. How can
Yep.
you make improvements? The people who are the hands-on, the doers, they're the ones who have the best feedback and maybe the hardest feedback for you to hear.
Yes. Yes. And I totally agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
And that is you're mentioning of the point of you don't know what people are going
Mm-hmm.
through.
Right.
So that could have been
Mm-hmm.
in my talk could have been
Mm-hmm.
people who are just
Mm-hmm.
ticked off or they
Right.
have issues
Somebody
in their
cut him off
organization.
in traffic. Who knows, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Or they really had issues in their
Mm-hmm.
leadership
Mm-hmm.
and they were like, I need
Right.
something with this
Mm-hmm.
specific thing, but
Mm-hmm.
how am I
Mm-hmm.
supposed to know
Right.
specifically what everybody
Right.
needs?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's so I took that with a grain of
Mm-hmm.
salt and I
Mm-hmm.
totally hear you. So
Mm-hmm.
that's an awesome,
Mm-hmm.
I love that how
Mm-hmm.
you came back and you were still able to keep your head, even though I'm sure it might have frazzled you a little bit.
It did. I was
Yeah.
like, oh, hey. But by
Yeah.
the excuse me, by the third time I thought, okay, it's not me. Um,
Yes. Yes. So
and
I
mhm.
commend you for actually asking him to leave,
Mhm.
and then you still had that engagement, a professional engagement. And I think that's a huge point
Right.
for
It now I tell
leaders.
you, it
Yeah.
did scare me when I went out because and but there were people in the parking lot, so I knew it wasn't going to be. And this was long enough ago that it wasn't like I was worried he was armed or
Yeah.
anything like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But it is hard to take criticism, and I think one of the key things for a leader is to be able to take that criticism. And we
Yeah.
were talking before that there are people who have the title, I'm putting that in my air quotes, boss, director, owner, whatever,
Yeah.
and they automatically think that they are the leader, or we think that they're the leader. And so talk about that a little bit more. Is the title doesn't necessarily mean you're a leader.
Yeah, I think that's a huge thing.
Mhm.
And we need to embody, as one of my coaches
Mhm.
who coaches me, he says we need to
Mhm.
embody these
Mhm.
qualities, not
Mhm.
just wear them on as like a
Right.
piece of clothing. Well,
Mhm.
look at me, I've got this
Mhm.
title,
Mhm.
I'm the leader,
Mhm.
you know, that kind
Mhm.
of thing, but truly
Mhm.
embody these qualities
Mhm.
and having integrity,
Mhm.
which is also
Mhm.
coming with your full self,
Mhm.
which is what I'm now doing with my faith.
Mhm.
And then when
Right.
I coach people, I'm saying, hey,
Mhm.
you know, depending on the meeting and depending
Mhm.
on the person, I'll
Right.
ask them, hey, can I pray for you at the end of this
Yes.
meeting
Mhm.
or this thing
Mhm.
that's
Mhm.
going on?
Mhm.
And I'll
Mhm.
share more about
Mhm.
me, where I'm coming
Mhm.
from, so that person
Right.
knows more of me because they don't
Mhm.
know until there's a
Mhm.
longer
Mhm.
engagement. But if that resonates with them, it's like,
Mhm.
hey, let's bring this in
Mhm.
instead of you
Mhm.
separating some of the most
Right.
important pieces that
Mhm.
empower you.
Mhm.
So yeah, just having that title, if
Mhm.
anything.
Mhm.
I even told one of my recent staff members who I hired her, and I said, I'm going to come in fully as I'm coaching people
Mhm.
the same way. But I
Mhm.
just told her, I said, listen, I'm going to treat you. I'm from this point on, you're treating me like I'm your boss, and you just
Mhm.
want to make everything right. I
Mhm.
said, do not do that.
Mhm.
I said, we are in a
Mhm.
partnership. So everybody we deal with, we're
Mhm.
in a partnership,
Mhm.
whether it's our spouse, our colleague,
Mhm.
our staff member driving on the side of the road. We're all
Mhm.
colleagues and partners,
Mhm.
hoping we'll all obey the laws,
Right.
respect each
Mhm.
other, and all of
Mhm.
that. So I told her, I said, at this point on, we're like brother and
Mhm.
sister.
Mhm.
In a sense, I have the final say
Mhm.
so on things, but I'm going to treat you
Mhm.
with respect because
Mhm.
if you're the weakest link,
Mhm.
that's not going to be good. If I'm
Mhm.
the weakest link, that's not going to be good.
Mhm.
So ideally, both of us
Mhm.
are raising up and
Mhm.
empowering
Right.
each other.
Mhm.
And ideally,
Mhm.
you're getting fulfillment out of
Mhm.
this relationship. And I am too. And we're both
Mhm.
being productive. So
Mhm.
it's once again, a rising tide raises
Mhm.
all
Mhm.
ships, which means we all can be
Mhm.
fulfilled
Right.
and
Mhm.
successful in many different ways.
Right.
So yeah, I think it's
Mhm.
just really important for people to both have humility
Mhm.
when you do have some leadership roles and learn to listen
Mhm.
more. I think that's one
Yes.
thing since
It's
I've
the old
never
you
been.
have two ears and one mouth.
Yes, yes.
Mhm.
And I was actually good at that because I
Mhm.
was so afraid of everything.
Mhm.
I just shut up and I was an introvert and
Ah.
quiet. So I
Mhm.
listened
You soaked
better.
in a lot. Mhm.
Yes, yes. And I didn't
Mhm.
realize that was a gift.
Mhm.
I just knew I did not
Mhm.
want to talk.
Mhm.
However,
Mhm.
that was one of my
Mhm.
strengths. So I'm learning to speak better.
Mhm.
And really, the piece
Mhm.
I was going to mention too is to
Mhm.
ask better questions of
Mhm.
people around
Mhm.
us.
Right.
Because it's
Mhm.
amazing what you can get
Mhm.
out of people
Mhm.
in terms of their
Mhm.
wisdom, their innovation,
Mhm.
their knowledge,
Right.
and bringing this
Mhm.
team aspect
Mhm.
along in our organizations rather than
Mhm.
I've got the title, I
Mhm.
should know
Mhm.
everything.
Right.
Because the leaders who have that mentality that they should know everything, they shouldn't
Mhm.
make mistakes,
Mhm.
those are the ones who are the most stressed,
Mhm.
have a lot of health issues,
Right.
don't want to
Mhm.
come into
Mhm.
to work every
Mhm.
day, or maybe
Mhm.
overworked
Mhm.
even on the weekend
Mhm.
because they're like, I've got to get it right, so I've got to
Mhm.
put in more time.
Mhm.
How about
Right.
we empower
Mhm.
everybody on the team,
Mhm.
and then you set
Mhm.
the leadership
Mhm.
example of
Right.
balance,
Mhm. Mhm.
communication,
Mhm.
clarity,
Mhm.
managing your
Mhm.
energy levels, taking
Mhm.
breaks, family
Mhm.
relationships,
Right. Mhm.
and time spent
Mhm.
there. All these different examples, but we don't realize that
Mhm.
how we behave and
Mhm.
treat people,
Mhm.
we're setting up that
Mhm.
same
Right.
cycle for them to
Mhm.
either treat you
Mhm.
or others on the
Mhm.
team, which tears
Mhm.
everybody down.
Mhm. Right. Yeah. So as we're recording this, yesterday was National Bosses Day. And in my business, the pay the bills side, we manage social media for
Hmm.
our clients. And one of my clients texted me a picture of multiple pictures of the boss, and all the things they did for her. And
Yep.
and the text that she went, and frequently I will kind of rewrite or embellish on the text, things like that.
Yep.
But I didn't change this. Her text to me said, Rita is far more than a boss. She is a true leader.
Ooh, that's
Right? You
awesome.
can't change that. And I just thought, and I know them and all of those things, but to me, that was the absolute highest compliment that somebody could pay. And so, yeah, do you want to be the boss? And okay, sometimes we have to be the boss. We have
Yeah.
to say, you will do it this way. I don't care if it's your kids. I don't care if it's your employees, whoever.
Right.
I mean, there are times where you have to do that. It's kind of, like the old, the buck stops here,
Yep.
but how are you going to lead them? And and I think so many times, and we see it with people who are in a position of power, they think that empowering and delegating are bad words. And that
Mm,
more importantly, we will think less of them
right,
because they are doing that. And of course, the best thing is when they say, hey, what do y'all think?
right,
And to get that feedback, to get that input. Sometimes, you say we want, and you still have to say, no, that's not going to work.
right.
But tell them why. That
Yep.
don't just say no, say, okay, we have budget constraints, or there's tariffs, or
Yeah.
whatever. And let them know again, I appreciate the fact that you felt that you could tell me this, because then they'll do it again. If you
Yep.
tell them nope, 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 then they're not gonna come to you again.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. And I just recorded that on my one of my podcast episodes yesterday
Mm-hmm,
about that whole trust
mm-hmm,
equation
mm-hmm.
and just being willing to
Right.
open up
Mm-hmm,
to other people and ask
mm-hmm,
questions. Let them know, hey, we
mm-hmm,
all have these different roles.
mm-hmm,
I have the final
mm-hmm,
responsibility, but
mm-hmm,
also to follow up on
mm-hmm,
that. Because if
mm-hmm.
we're never following up that, hey, we had this meeting
Right.
and that these
Mm-hmm,
ideas were considered,
mm-hmm,
people like, we're just talking into a vacuum.
mm-hmm,
And then give them
mm-hmm.
credit
Right.
when they
Mm-hmm,
do have an idea that
mm-hmm,
is going to be
mm-hmm,
considered. But the huge piece of
mm-hmm,
just telling them why, letting them know
mm-hmm,
why instead of just
mm-hmm,
do X, Y, and
mm-hmm,
Z just because I
mm-hmm.
said so.
Right. Right.
But people want to have that purpose. They
Mm-hmm,
want to feel
mm-hmm,
important, and the things they do have
mm-hmm.
meaning. So
Right.
that's
Mm-hmm.
huge.
Right. And
Yep.
it is hard as the person in charge. I am type A. I am an
Mm.
only child. I mean, all of those things. And the hardest thing for me, and I, there are times where I just stop myself and smack myself in the head, um, is to fully recognize that somebody else can do maybe even a better job than what I could do. And more importantly, it might be different, but that
Hmm.
doesn't mean it won't work.
Right.
I was having a conversation with somebody just yesterday about this, about something I have done as a volunteer for years and years and years, and I'm releasing it. And I told him, I said, I don't want you to think that because we've always done it this way, we have to continue. I said, that's a
Hmm.
very limiting thought. And I said, bring it on. The worst that's going to happen is somebody says no, but they
Yes.
can't say yes if we don't give them the opportunity.
Yep. Correct.
You know,
Correct. Yeah.
and
We.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I somebody told me, hey, you need to interview Deion Sanders,
Mhm.
right? He's a cancer survivor. I'm a cancer survivor,
Yeah.
all these things. And I'm like, oh my God, but it's Deion Sanders, right? And now I've been very involved with the University of Colorado for many, many years. I still sit on a dean's board for the College of Arts and
Oh.
Sciences, season ticket holders, all this stuff. And so I thought the least they can do is tell me no. And so a couple of weeks ago, I emailed the people that I know in the athletic department, and I said, I've got this podcast, over 1,000 episodes. I would like to talk to him. And I did put in there, I'm on the dean's board. I'm a
Yeah.
season
Yeah.
ticket holder. I mean, you
Yeah.
got to get those things in there.
Yeah.
And I figured crickets, right? Less than 2 hours, I got a response. He would love to do it, but not during the season. Right. And so I said, okay, I'll put it on my list to contact you again in January.
Awesome.
Hopefully later, more later in January than earlier, right?
Right.
But
Right.
but yeah, it took a lot for me
Mhm.
to say, I'm gonna do that. But if he had told me no, I would have
Right.
gone, okay. I mean, it wouldn't have, even if he said now they would have been polite, right? They wouldn't have said, but
Right.
at the same point, we have to give people that opportunity to say no. And more
Yeah.
importantly, the opportunity to say yes.
Yes. Yeah. Big time. And I heard that from a sales coach too a long
Mm-hmm,
time ago. He said
mm-hmm,
it every time you don't ask,
mm-hmm.
it's an automatic no.
Right.
But when you ask, you are
Mm-hmm,
now
mm-hmm,
no different than a
mm-hmm,
baseball player who's batting 300,
mm-hmm,
3 hits out of
mm-hmm,
10.
mm-hmm.
That's excellent for
Right.
baseball. And
Yeah.
over time, whether it's
Mm-hmm,
sales,
mm-hmm,
business, or
mm-hmm,
opportunities,
mm-hmm.
that's great to have.
Right.
If you
Mm-hmm,
swing 10 times,
mm-hmm,
you're probably going to
mm-hmm.
hit something.
Right.
So I think that's
Mm-hmm.
awesome.
Right.
Yep.
And just like those baseball players, they have coaches, right?
Yep.
I don't care who you are. Yeah, if you're at that elite level, you
Yep.
have a coach.
Yep.
And so you are a coach. And so we've only got about 5 minutes left. So tell
Yeah.
us, Cory, how do people find you and what are the services that you provide?
Yeah, two ways they can find me. I'm currently working to update my website, but
Okay.
that's just corydunham.com,
Mm-hmm.
CORYDUNHAM.com. And then also I have a LinkedIn account, which is where most of my content and
Mm-hmm.
videos and posts are. And one of the biggest things I do is leadership coaching.
Mm-hmm.
So I work with executives and executive leadership teams, along with entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
And like I'll be talking in the next couple weeks here. Next week, I'll be
Mm-hmm.
heading out of town to go to Illinois to speak with some women business owners
Ooh.
on leadership
Mm-hmm.
and creating the business they want.
Mm-hmm.
Along with, because I resonate with this, and I was so happy to create this talk. In Minneapolis, Minnesota, in 2 weeks, basically, I will be speaking to a group
Mm-hmm.
during a workshop, and I've titled it Introverted Entrepreneurs and How You Can Create Business Without Losing Yourself or Your
Oh,
Identity.
I love that.
So yeah, and the
Mm-hmm.
whole introverted side of
Mm-hmm.
me is huge
Mm-hmm.
because there's a lot of leaders that I've
Mm-hmm.
found are introverted
Mm-hmm.
and they've just learned the skill sets to
Mm-hmm.
deal with it, but they still have this emotional
Mm-hmm.
baggage and
Mm-hmm.
trauma that they're dealing
Mm-hmm.
with, and then their
Mm-hmm.
identity things. It's like, wait a
Mm-hmm.
minute, so some of the things I'm going to coach on, I'm going to have
Mm-hmm.
this a very active
Mm-hmm.
workshop where they can get hands-on on getting
Mm-hmm.
some video
Mm-hmm.
of themselves and then sharing it with
Mm-hmm.
other people because usually people are just so hesitant with that.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And then a year ago I took in some improv classes, a couple of them, and that's
Oh,
helped me.
improv is great as a
Thank you.
business skill. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And most people say, I can never do that. I'm like, they train you. They
Mm-hmm.
train you. It's so much fun. So a couple of those areas I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
actually integrate. And I don't know if
Mm-hmm.
anybody else is doing anything like I'm doing, but of
Mm-hmm.
course I have my faith component
Right.
that I'm
Right.
bringing in,
Mm-hmm.
my full family
Mm-hmm.
aspect
Mm-hmm.
and importance,
Mm-hmm.
the introvert,
Mm-hmm.
the overcoming and
Mm-hmm.
taking action and
Mm-hmm.
creating, as I've heard, a
Mm-hmm.
thousand points of evidence to show you that you can be competent in one area. You don't
Mm-hmm.
have to shift into that,
Mm-hmm.
but we all have roles and identities.
Mm-hmm.
As a parent, I have a role, as a
Right.
pilot,
Mm-hmm.
as a basketball
Mm-hmm.
player,
Mm-hmm.
as a son,
Mm-hmm.
as a whatever we
Mm-hmm.
do. We shift into those
Mm-hmm.
different roles,
Mm-hmm.
and it's okay if we're not comfortable with everyone. Because as
Mm-hmm.
you said earlier, many times we just have to be the point person. That's just
Mm-hmm.
our role at this moment
Mm-hmm.
to make these
Mm-hmm.
decisions, and the buck stops here.
Right.
So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so people can find me in
Mm-hmm.
mostly on
Mm-hmm.
LinkedIn and my website,
Mm-hmm.
and then I also do these keynote
Mm-hmm.
talks and
Mm-hmm.
workshops.
Great. Well, and we will link to your LinkedIn, or we'll have the link to your LinkedIn profile in our
Yep.
show notes, and so people can easily find that. Especially since your website is in progress.
Yes.
So
Yep.
we want to send them to LinkedIn because we know that's the best resource.
Yep.
Well, Cory, this really has been so much fun, and like I said, I find it interesting that we've been talking a lot about leadership. On my podcast, I've had quite a few guests recently about that, and I think there is um, a quest for it. I think we're
Hmm.
seeing that we need more leaders. I think we're seeing that more people are thinking, I need to step up.
Yes.
There's whether it's with your company, whether it's with your community, your church, wherever. I
Yep.
think people are really thinking, okay, and realize it's not going to hurt. you know, you can do
Yeah.
it. And so I hope that people will reach out to you, connect with you on LinkedIn, and read your resources and things like that because
Thank you.
it is very valuable. So we'll have you on again. I love having repeat guests, but until then, do you have any final thoughts that you want to leave everyone with?
Yeah, just your last comments on leadership, why it's so important nowadays, and especially with AI and technology, and that 30 years ago, we'd all remember we only had one house phone. We'd all remember the numbers that we had to call. I know my wife's phone number, but I don't know my three kids' phone number off the top of my brain. And now with people using AI, people are using their brains, that muscle, less and less. So we're getting more distant. I mean, AI is going to continue to accelerate. Just it's amazing. But us as humans, that's also some workshops and things I'm going to be creating in content on how do we become AI enabled superhumans, so to speak, and not with an implant of a chip. That'll probably happen. But basically, how do we not get so distant? How do we still use our critical thinking skills? How do we practice these and create a routine so we still stay human, but we're human beings who are intentional and have meaning and purpose.
Oh my gosh, I love that. So we definitely have to have you on again to talk about that because I think that's one of the
Yeah.
things that people are going to be challenged about is how do, AI is not going away, folks. It's moving quicker than we can even imagine. And so how can we use that as the tool that it is to help those abilities? So I love that. We will definitely have you on again.
Awesome.
Well, I'm Deb Creer. I've been having so much fun talking with Cory Dunham. And until next time, everyone have a great day.
Thank you, Deb.
Tune in for our next program for even more trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. The Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer, is proud to be part of the C-Suite Network.